in 2004, we made the original movie, and then sometime around 2017, 18, we made the musical.
What was that?
Oh Lord, it's the Queen Bee. Don't look her in the eye!
Welcome to EchoNest Media, where we dive deep into the wildest stories shaping our world. It's October 3rd. Again, the internet lights up pink. Brands, celebrities, and your entire feed suddenly remember one very specific line. On October 3rd, he asked me what day it was. A movie that premiered in 2004 still hijacks the calendar every year. It doesn't matter how old you are. Mean Girls finds you. 20 years later, it's not just nostalgia. It's proof that one teen comedy quietly rewired pop culture, language, and even the way we act online. Here are 10 things you need to know about Mean Girls 20 years later, and why we never really left North Shore High. 1. It started as a parenting guide. Before it was a movie, Mean Girls was a 2002 self-help book called Queen Bees and Wannabes. It was written by educator Rosalind Wiseman to help parents understand female social hierarchies. Tina Fey found it in a bookstore and thought, what if the social survival manual was a comedy? Fey built a script out of sociology, not slapstick. She mapped every line of power, gossip, and belonging she'd witnessed in high school, then disguised it as humor. That's why the film feels funny on the surface, but cuts deep. It isn't about one group of girls. It's about how humans organize themselves when no one's watching. 2. A perfect storm of casting. Lindsay Lohan had just left her Disney phase. Rachel McAdams was virtually unknown, auditioning originally for Katie before Faye switched her to Regina. Amanda Seyfried landed her role by accident after failing another audition. Even Tina Fey later said, "We didn't realize we were casting archetypes that would follow us for decades." The chemistry was real because no one knew what they were doing yet. They filmed in Toronto in under 2 months on a modest $17 million budget. No one expected it to gross $130 million. What they captured, that messy authenticity, is something the later musical remake couldn't reproduce with a bigger budget. 3. The studio tried to water it down. Executives were nervous. Early drafts were rated R for language and sexual references. Faye was forced to tone it down so teenage audiences could actually see it. They replaced words like masturbation with love. A deleted scene featuring Damien confronting homophobia was cut completely. Ironically, those limitations made the dialogue sharper. You had to imply cruelty rather than show it. The result? Humor that felt intelligent instead of cheap. The film's restraint aged better than most teen comedies of the era, which relied on shock humor. Mean Girls weaponized implication, and that subtlety is why it still works today. 4. It rewired. How teens talk, you probably quote it without realizing it. So you agree, you think you're really pretty. She doesn't even go here. That's why her hair is so big. It's full of secrets. In 2019, a University of Sheffield linguistics study found Mean Girls lines among the most reused movie quotes on Twitter and Tumblr. The tone, short, self-aware, deadpan, became the default rhythm of online sarcasm. When you hear a TikTok voiceover dripping with irony, that cadence was born in 2004. Mean Girls didn't just reflect how teenagers talk. It taught generations how to sound confident through humor. That rhythm became internet DNA. 5. It accidentally predicted influencer culture. Regina George is the blueprint for the algorithm. She curates, controls access, sets trends, and punishes disloyalty in public. Sound familiar? The Burn Book is basically the first viral feed, user-generated content turned into entertainment. When YouTube launched in 2005, Mean Girls clips dominated early uploads. Marketing researchers later called Regina a proto-influencer, a fictional case study in branding. The film's core lesson, that popularity requires constant performance, became literal for social media users. We became our own Regina George, editing our lives for likes while pretending not to care. 6. It was quietly revolutionary behind the camera. Nearly 70% of the crew were women, unheard of in 2004 studio filmmaking. Faye was a first-time screenwriter, supported by producer Lorne Michaels, who fought for her creative control. The result was a comedy that didn't humiliate its female characters for laughs. Even the costume design carried meaning. Regina's high-gloss pinks were inspired by luxury packaging. Katie's gradual wardrobe shift mirrors her moral slide. These small choices gave the story visual psychology. Every time you rewatch, you're subconsciously reading power through fashion. 7. The October 3rd phenomenon. It's marketing gold that no one planned. That single line, "On October 3rd, he asked me what day it was," became a digital holiday. Google searches for Mean Girls spike more than 500% every year on that date. Brands compete to post pink graphics and relatable captions. Paramount sells new merch drops, streaming platforms promote the film, and fans treat it like a pop culture pilgrimage. It's a reminder that audiences, not studios, create cultural rituals. The internet turned a throwaway joke into a 20-year recurring marketing event worth millions. 8. The 2024 remake was a data experiment. When Paramount Plus released the Mean Girls musical remake, the goal wasn't art, it was analytics. Executives wanted to measure how far nostalgia could pull subscriptions. The result? 500 million TikTok views across clips within weeks. Reviews were irrelevant. Engagement was the metric. Critics called it algorithm cinema, familiar enough to trend, divisive enough to sustain discourse. In other words, a Regina George strategy. The studio didn't need audiences to love it, just to talk about it. That's the evolution of Mean Girls, from script to meme to marketing software. 9. Gen Z. Adopted it as meta-commentary for millennials, Mean Girls is memory. For Gen Z, it's meta. They re-edit the film to expose its absurdity, turning Regina's cruelty into surreal humor or anti-influencer satire. Some TikTok creators stage burn book readings using AI voice filters. Others mix lines with feminist manifestos. The irony is that Gen Z sees Mean Girls as a cautionary tale about the exact social hierarchies they now face online. The Plastics Cafeteria is their For You page. They're in on the joke. And that self-awareness keeps the movie alive in a totally new language. 10. It's studied, quoted, and institutionalized. Mean Girls has been dissected in over 250 academic papers, from sociology to linguistics to marketing. Harvard Business Review referenced it in a piece on toxic empathy in workplaces. Even the U.S. Army used it in leadership training to illustrate how power structures form under pressure. When a teen comedy becomes required reading in business school, it's not nostalgia, it's anthropology. Faye's screenplay turned teenage behavior into a universal map for social systems. Whether it's a corporate office or a Twitter timeline, the dynamics barely changed. 11. Yes, an extra one. We never graduated. The film ends with peace in the lunchroom. In real life, we built a bigger one online. Twitter threads, Instagram grids, TikTok duets. They're all new tables in the same cafeteria. We still chase attention, still fear exile, still perform likability for an invisible crowd. Every October 3rd feels less like nostalgia and more like recognition. We laugh at Regina George while scrolling through influencers who mirror her perfectly. We quote the movie ironically, but still measure ourselves by the same hierarchy it mocked. Mean Girls didn't just predict influencer culture. It invented the emotional logic of it. That's why it never dies. 20 years later, the pink still pops, the quotes still circulate, and the mirror still stings. Mean Girls began as satire, became scripture, and ended up as the social operating system of the internet age. We didn't outgrow Mean Girls. We uploaded it. Thanks for watching. And remember, on Wednesdays we wear self-awareness.